My name is Bimbo Fola Alade. You heard my husband, Pastor Shola, take the first session. We lead the Liberty Church together, and we're really excited to be hosting this conference for the singles in-house, but of course, all the other singles from all over the world that are joining us today, because we're really passionate about relationships and strengthening relationships and preparing people to make great choices and enjoy godly relationships. So the first thing we're going to do, we have a lot to pack into the hour and a half that we have, or hour and 15 minutes that we have till the conference ends. So first thing that we're going to do right now is going to go to the breakout and just get a little bit of feedback from all of the breakout leads. So breakout leads, if you're ready, let's just have one breakout one. So maybe let's take the breakout on online dating first. Tolu, if you want to tell us what was it that you guys, the question was online dating dangers and opportunities. So tell us a little bit about your discussion and what it is that you guys concluded about that topic at your breakout. So you got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, thank you, Pastor Bimbo. So we discussed online dating, dangers and opportunities. And I think the majority of the group that spoke and contributed saw it as an opportunity. So one of the first things we spoke about was the changing narrative around online dating, especially in the last 5 years, and how online dating has really become a very common part of social media and social media interactions at the moment. So that was the first thing we discussed. The second thing we then discussed is whether or not you're being too forward by engaging in online dating. And we had some different opinions. And so we had some opinions that said that actually being a part, like, taking part in online dating is tantamount to doing God's work for him, or, taking shortcuts, and actually you're doing the most by doing online dating. And then we had some other opinions that said, well, actually, you're not going to meet your spouse at home. You're not going to meet your spouse just randomly. So you need to add your work to add to your faith. So we had that whole discussion. We also spoke a bit around the safety element for online dating. And because our question was asking around, is it a danger? So some of the opinions said that actually you can meet, people that are fake, people that are predators, people that are a little bit crazy online, but at the same time, you can meet those same people in real life. You work with them, you see them in the shops, you might even see them in your family. Do you know what I mean? No shade intended. So people are crazy. It doesn't matter where you are, online or in person. And actually for us as Christians, and if you're not a Christian at least, it's to add wisdom, it's to ask the right questions, it's to take safety precautions and measures and use discernment before you engage with anybody, like meeting up and stuff like that. We also then spoke about taking time out. So online dating can be quite overwhelming, and depending on which apps you are on, people can video call you nowadays, they can message you, they can find many ways to get your attention quite quickly. So actually taking some time out every few months from online dating is quite helpful. And then another thing that came in that we didn't flesh out but was interesting was around balancing rejection, and I'll also add ghosting to that. So just like all things social media, you're opening up yourself to more experiences, be it negative or positive, and some of that could also include the more people you meet, the more opportunities that there are for rejection, ghosting, etc. So it's really about also being balanced. So those are some of the things that came out. And then the last thing we discussed was the different types of apps. One lady in our group said she met her partner on an app, so that was a great testimony there. But there are different apps, Christian apps and non-Christian apps. Some are crazier than others, and that's what we discussed in our group. So thank you.
And it's a really interesting time to be alive and to be single. And I know that it even sounds controversial within a church led conference to talk about singles and online dating, but it's so important that we speak to the issues that people are dealing with and where people are living at the moment. And life is done digitally these days, so I guess it only makes sense that people will also connect romantically online. And I think it's just about doing it prayerfully, doing it wisely, and doing it with accountability. So thanks for that feedback. Perhaps at the chat show, we'll have more of an opportunity to unpack this, but great insight and summary that you gave us. So can we go now to splash the cash or stay low key? I think that is Olamide's group. So yes, if you want to read out your question and then just give us feedback.
Sure. So the question is, splash the cash or stay low key to attract a fiance. Actually, Esther, hopefully she's still on the call, volunteered to give a brief summary on this.
Yeah, so in our group, we spoke about do we splash the cash, do we maintain to attract people, or do you stay low key? And we had a bit of discussion, and one of the key themes that came up was the fact that, you know, the intimidation that sometimes men may feel with high flying women. So I think there was a lady in our group, and she mentioned the fact that, you know, she had a job, and she was, you know, good, well-paying job, driving a nice car, and in a new church that she joined, she had a lot of people talking about her in the sense of, oh, she thinks she's a big girl, you know, like you say, she thinks she's a big girl, she's got this, she's got that. So sometimes having these material things that obviously show that, you know, you're doing well for yourself, they could actually be quite intimidating to men. And we also had some people who said they could not, you know, they couldn't settle for less. Basically, they're not ready to settle for less, because at the end of the day, if you live a lifestyle that is, let's say, up here, you don't really want to, you can get in a relationship with someone that is not on your lifestyle wavelength, but ultimately, if it does get to marriage, or if it does get further down in the relationship, it will just cause trouble. And then one of the things that I contributed was, sometimes it's actually not about the salary in itself. Sometimes it's about the value that you place on things. So we have person A and person B, and, you know, maybe yes, one earns a greater salary than the other, but ultimately it's not necessarily about the figure in itself. It could be about what you place value on. So for example, a female has grown up always going on vacation with her family every summer, whereas the male that she's talking to or wanting to get in a relationship with hasn't grown up like that. So when she's saying, oh, I want to go on holiday, we should go on at least 2 holidays a year, or at least 1 holiday a year, what she sees as enjoyment and living her life, the guy will see as a waste of time and a waste of money, you know? So sometimes it's not actually about the salary in itself, it's about how that is allocated and the value that you place on things. So I think, to conclude, what we really said is, ultimately it's everyone for themselves. Some people are happy to, you know, be high flyers, whether that's male or female, to be high flyers, and ultimately whoever they attract, and whoever they don't attract, they're not ready to settle. Whereas some people, they have had to dim their light somehow, but also in that dimming their light, is it not putting on a false pretense of what you're really not? And when it comes down to the marriage, will you not just lead to frustration? So yeah, that's what we discussed.
Great, thanks for that contribution, Esther. It's an interesting question and a tricky one, I think, of you know, a dilemma that I know that lots of ladies face in church of, if you're doing really well, should that be evident? Would that put some men off? Will it make you, will some men think you're high maintenance because of that? Or for some men who are doing really well, will you attract gold diggers, so to speak? So I guess it works both ways. And I think it's really about being wise in how you portray yourself and deal with yourself and other people, and maybe taking time to really get to know people and know why it is that they're interested in you and their motives, if that is something that has been like problematic or something that you faced in your relational life. So sounds like you guys had an interesting conversation. Thanks for the feedback. Okay, so shall we go to Demi's group? I think you guys were talking about social media and putting your dating life on social media. So give us a little feedback from your group.
Yes, Pastor Bimbo, thank you. Yeah, we spoke about, so should we actually publicize our relationships online, or should we keep them privately to ourselves? And the first thing that someone said was actually that sometimes we actually need to see examples of healthy relationships being publicized and being like put out there. So for example, I gave the example of you and Pastor Shola, that seeing your relationship publicly has actually been a very good source of inspiration to many of us. But also on the other end, many relationships that are on Instagram are very deceptive. So we only see the highlights, people when they go out for their cute Valentine's Day dinners, but we don't see, the real nitty-gritty of what they're going through on a day-to-day. We also said, what is the motive behind you actually sharing your, relationship online? Because sometimes we get into relationships and we're so excited and we just want to kind of show the world that actually I finally have a boyfriend. Finally, I'm going on that Valentine's Day dinner. Finally, I actually got those flowers that I've been waiting for, to post, those red roses. So what is your motive? Are you just trying to, make someone feel bad? Why are you actually doing it? And we also actually spoke about the whole thing where you're in a relationship and you're posting the person constantly and then you break up. Do you go and delete the photos, or do you kind of leave them on there? What do you then do? Are you going to just delete half of your Instagram page and there'll be no photos of you and him anymore? And then we said, to Pastor Shola's point on strategic positioning, sometimes we should go and delete those photos and, make it clear to people that we are single. So yeah, it was a really diverse conversation. Someone said actually that they are very, very, very private. And so nobody would, if they got engaged today, no one would know. They would only tell their really, really, really close friends. And I said to her, what if your husband is not that private? And she said he can share, but, he would only share maybe the side of her face or the back of her hair, So I guess everybody, is different. But yeah, it was a really interesting conversation. And I guess it just depends on who you are and what you like. So yeah.
And I think you kind of covered all the responses we'd expect, and quite, wise feedback. So thanks a lot for that, Damie. Pastor Scholes?
I think it'll be important to also mention that one of the disadvantages of sharing your dating relationship with others on Instagram or Facebook is that what if you eventually don't get married?
Mm-hmm.
What you publicize out there, you have to start explaining to all your followers later on when something goes wrong. And then when a new guy or girl comes, you now start presenting somebody else again.
Mm-hmm.
And if it happens 2 or 3 times, you might have a problem. So that's one disadvantage amongst the advantages.
Great. All right. So should we go on to Rachel's group? Rachel, tell us your question and what you guys concluded.
Yes, thank you, Pastor Bimbo. So we discussed introductions, yay or nay. So that's people introducing you to a potential partner. Are we for it or against it? I think for the most part, our group were open to it, but there were a few examples where it didn't go well. So I think a few of the questions that we came up with or that people shared that would be important to ask if you're in a position where someone's introducing you to someone else would be, does the person facilitating the introduction know you well enough or what you would like? Because we had some examples where people felt like people were introducing someone to them just, because they felt like they weren't doing enough to find a partner, or that, they just felt like they just needed someone. So just asking whether or not that person knows you well enough. Another question we spoke about was, are they doing it with the right heart? So are they just obsessed with matchmaking and playing Cupid, or even worse, are they jealous and possibly trying to set you up for failure? So I guess just knowing who the person is that's introducing you, I think that's important. One thing that we all agreed on was that it's important to do your due diligence and do your research, no matter who introduces you, and getting to know that person for yourself. Also, someone raised the point that we meet people in various ways. So whether or not you meet them at work or at the shop or you're introduced to them, it's important to control your response. You may not be able to stop people from introducing you, but you can control how you respond to that person. So as Christians, we should be kind, be wise, and be Christ-like in our response, because you just never know where that relationship may lead, even if it's not romantic.
For that, Rachel. So I think we've got just 2 more groups. Let's hear from Temitope's group, and then we'll go on to Toby's group lastly.
Thank you, Pastor Bimbo. So for my group, the question we had was, can you date more than one person, or should you date more than one person? We had a range of responses, across the group, and I noticed that it tended to differ a little bit across gender lines. And so the first thing we had was, most ladies in the group said yes. Some ladies said no. The reason for yes was, keep your options open. And some people said no and said, well, how much of yourself can you invest across, a number of people, more than one person? One of the things we noticed was that definitions matter. So what do we actually define as dating? So along the sort of talking spectrum all the way to marriage, where is the dating bit there? And someone said something quite profound, I thought, was that match your commitment to your accountability. Along that dating journey or that spectrum. And as most ladies said, as the relationships become more intimate, as you realize you're talking to one person or you're gravitating towards one person more, maybe stop talking to the others, and focus on just that one rather than keeping all the others going on all the way. On the guy side, as it were, on the group, the feeling was, if you're serious about someone, you wouldn't be talking to multiple people from a guy's perspective. That was the view shared. And also the risk was, from a guy's perspective as well, it was shared that if you're a guy and you're talking to multiple people, there's a risk there that you keep talking to multiple people, even when, you don't expect it to lead anywhere. So that's a temptation. You're gonna, as a guy, you're gonna have to fend off. Maybe you like the attention, or you just like the company, or any other reason, but you actually don't intend for the relationship to lead anywhere. So these were a couple of the points we touched. And finally, we asked the question, how would you feel if you found that the person you're talking to is also talking to multiple people? So that gave us food for thought, and yeah, it was quite an interesting conversation, a wide range of views.
Charles, do you want to comment on that?
Not really. I think it's said it in summary.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting that it was the guys that were saying, it should be like one person at a time. I would have probably thought they were the more likely to want to play the field and, talk to several ladies at the same time. So it seems we've got some good guys around. That's good news. So let's go to Toby's group finally. And his question, I think, was, can you be 35, single, and content? So let's have your feedback.
Thanks, Phoebe. Yeah, that was the question. Can you be 35, single, one, content? And this was quite personal, actually, because people had quite a range of views. First thing was, what is content, so to say? And people defined it in different ways. There was actually someone that said that as Christians we shouldn't be content, that he believes content is a place of rest, it's a place of complacency, that you should always want more. And then there was someone else that said that for them, content is being genuinely happy, true happiness. That then there was also the purpose conversation that, it should be a thing of where you found yourself by the time you're 35, or well, by the time you get to a certain age, you should have found yourself. And when you're joining yourself with someone, you're adding to them rather than being a liability. Then someone else then came on and we said, and he said, so I said, okay, the marriage context, that what do you think? And the person said, well, at 35, if they're not married, they're not going to be content, because for them, marriage is one of the things that would basically, that's on their list of goals, so to say. So it was quite personal, but in all, I think a majority of people did say yes. They will be content. Obviously, they have personal desires. They want to have things that they want to achieve by 35. But if marriage is not achieved, they would. There's so much more than marriage to them, basically, that they'll be happy with. And there was also the discussion about aunties, the pressure. The cultural pressures that aunties will be saying to you, where your mates are married, why are you not married, what kind of, say you're a career person, so to say, you can be the CEO, you can be the CEO, you can be C-suite star, you can basically be an high achiever, but if you're not married, aunties will come and be saying to you that yo, what's happening? You need to get yourself together. There was also something else about, oh yeah, that someone said, yeah, you can't, without being content, you cannot add to someone else. And Pastor was saying earlier about you getting with someone, you're adding to them. So if you're not content in yourself, if you haven't found yourself, you can add to someone. I think that's it really. But again, it was diverse. People were like, you know what, it's personal for me. I'll be happy and grateful, but I will not be content if I'm single at 35. And some people are like, listen, I'll be living my best life 35 regardless.
Fantastic. And I think I would really want to take that last statement you make, because I think especially for some of the ladies who have been looking to get married for some time, you have to make a decision, I think, at some point about what position you're going to take concerning that desire. You know, are you going to tilt into depression, desperation, settling, or are you going to decide, I'm just going to live my life, I'm going to enjoy my life, I'm going to make the most of the opportunities that come along, and I'm going to believe God that in due season, He will bring the right person to me, but I'm not going to jeopardize my present for what I'm looking for, you know, in terms of a mate or a husband. And I think it's a key decision that every woman has to make, because I see so many people compromising. You know, they get to a certain stage, and yes, all the noise of the aunties, and you know, and the pressure is there. But what we often don't hear is the regret on the other side. But I hear it because I'm a marriage counselor. And so, you know, if there was one central message I would want to give to single ladies, it would be that, you know, with Pastor Shola said earlier in his session when he was talking about knowing your value, knowing you are a good thing. And if you're a good thing, you should be valued and treated as that, and not settling because, you know, you feel like there's a scarcity of men, and well, this is the only person that has approached you in some time. So it seems like you guys had a great conversation in your group. Thank you guys for sharing. I really kind of enjoyed, popped into 4 of the groups, and it was, you know, awesome to just hear the conversations and to hear people being open and sharing their opinions. So thanks for everybody who contributed, and your contributions are really valued. So we've got about half an hour. Wow, where did all the time go? And we're going to slide now into our chat show element. And I have a few questions already that have been submitted, and I just wanted to go into that. And we're going to invite the panelists to make their contributions as well. And of course, myself and Pastor Will. But there's so many great questions. And I think one of the first questions, which I found interesting, is the age difference question, okay, which is there a certain age gap that is too wide that just makes a person that you would potentially date be somebody you wouldn't consider? So I would want to go to the ladies with this. So the ladies on the panel, are there any, is there like a guy that's too old or too young? Because it can work both ways. Let's have your thoughts on that.
I don't mind going first. So, I mean, for me, like there's a 9-year gap between my mom and my dad. So I've always looked at, you know, that age gap, well, at least when you get to a certain age, that's not so much like a big deal. It's really about who the person is, you know, and the kind of person that God is asking you to kind of like partner up with. And if that's who he is, then let his age not stop you. And whether he is, I definitely wouldn't say 9 years younger. I would not recommend that at all. But if they're like 2 years younger, you know, a couple years younger, depending on how old you are as well. Because if I'm 21, I don't think I would want to date a 19-year-old. just, because, or maybe actually 21s should not really be dating yet, maybe. So maybe if I was 24, maybe 22 might be too young. But generally, I think that I don't think the age gap, a 9-year age gap, a 10-year age gap is not so bad. Those are my thoughts.
Man, right? But it doesn't work the other way.
Yes, exactly.
All right. That's your opinion.
That's
okay. Ladies, Tolu, Rachel, what are your thoughts?
I'll come in and say, it's quite interesting actually, because my sister reminds me of this. So about a year and a half ago, the girls came to my house and we were all talking about this question. And one of my friends said that she would date somebody that was 10 years older than her. And we all laughed. We were in this room, we all fell on the floor laughing. And then fast forward a year later, I dated somebody that was 9 years older than me. And actually, age isn't as defining a factor as you think it is once you yourself are at a certain age. So if you were 14 dating somebody that was 16, that age gap can be quite big. If you were 16 dating somebody that was 21, that age gap can be quite big. But if you're 30 dating someone who's 39 and you yourself are a mature 30-year-old, and technically, according to the streets, right, men mature later. So actually, though you're 30 and he's 39, he's probably 35 mentally, right? So actually, there's enough room for him, according to the streets. So this isn't science. So let me not say anything that puts someone into trouble. But yes, I think that the age, if I am honest, I do think anything more than 10 years, you start to it starts to get a bit different. And when you look at power dynamics, when you look at things around abuse and financial control, emotional abuse, all of those kind of things, I think it's easier to happen when somebody is a lot older than you. And I also think there's something about you as an individual needing to give yourself room to experience things, exactly maturity, as Paula said, give yourself room to experience things, because if you're dating an older person, they may have experienced that before you and may not want to repeat all of that. So they may have traveled the world and want to settle down, and you just want to get started. So those are some things to bear in mind.
Yeah, great contributions, Tolu. Let me go to the guys, and I want to ask you a slightly different question of dating an older woman, because I'd be interested to know, for the guys on the panel, is that something that you'd consider? And if so, what would you think is the kind of limit in terms of age difference? So any of the guys on the panel, Toby, Olamide, Temi, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm happy to go first. I definitely will be open to dating someone older than me. I have dated someone that's older than me before. But I think, again, at times, I've seen situations where it becomes a thing of, what do you know? Like, I'm older than you. I've experienced life more than you. And like, what are you talking about? And at times you might be in two different seasons. They're probably closer. They probably want to get, in my case, they were probably closer to getting married. They were in that mindset of marriage. And I was still more, let's just get to know each other. Let's take it easy. So it was like, yeah, we're two different, it's two different seasons. So I am open to it. And I think when it comes to Max, I would say probably about 3 years older, 3-4 years older.
Okay, great.
There's somebody on the chat that said they dated somebody that was 7 years younger, I think, and that the guy was mature. That was an interesting one.
How many years difference?
It's 7 years, I think.
Who's older?
The lady's older, I believe.
Wow. And yeah, wow.
This person says, I've dated a guy younger than me, 7 years, but he was so mature, I didn't realize that he was younger than me.
Okay, so it's possible, maybe she was 35, he was 28. There's a possibility there that, he's somebody that...
And then someone said, my sister is married to someone 17 years older than her. And by God's grace, they are happily married.
Okay, so... I guess also being spirit-led, if we look at Ruth and Boaz, which was the example you used, I think there was a substantial age gap there. But I think culturally, it seems to be more acceptable for men to be substantially older than women being substantially older than their men.
Someone said that's how they'll be lying, that a guy told her he was 36 and meanwhile he was 42.
You do get that. I don't know. People are quite precious about their age when it comes to relationships. So
why do that?
maybe you think your real age will be a disadvantage.
But if the relationship is going to go anywhere, you find out.
But you'll be hooked by then.
I'm hoping you would want to see the birth certificate before you get married. The passport.
Your comments, guys. So I'm looking at some other questions we have here, and I'd love to, for those of you who are online, in the congregation, in the audience, please do post if you have any questions you want us to answer. We'll try and get to them. Someone asked this question: what about prenups for couples? Should Christian couples have a prenup? Apparently, this is a very topical issue on Clubhouse, with people discussing the need to protect their assets and protect against inheriting someone's debt or bankruptcy. So what are your thoughts? Should we have a prenups as Christians?
Oh yeah, myself personally, once there's all this prenup discussion, I feel like this, for me, there's to some level, some lack of trust. Because if I'm going into something with you, why am I signing a prenup? That means I'm thinking something would happen at some point. I have that at the back of my mind already. So mindset-wise, we're definitely in two different places. So yeah, for me personally, it's definitely a no.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Is there anyone who would sign a prenup? And if so, why?
And I guess maybe motivations matter. So with Toby's point, it's like, what's your motivation? Is it because you think you don't see this going anywhere? But is it possible that, there might be a different motivation behind it? And maybe that's why. I think personally, I wouldn't be want to sign one. I don't think, that's probably the right way to start. But because I understand objectively the point of it, maybe I'll be less hesitant or less resistant if I was in that position to sign on. And also because, I'm not, prenup or not, like, or my, what you have personally or individually, I'm not relying on, the other person or the money or finances or wealth, etc. So I maybe, on that basis, I might be a bit less resistant.
Okay. Thanks. Some really interesting comments. Someone said, I have life insurance. I would be foolish not to have marriage insurance. And someone said, no pre-nothing, you're stuck with me for life. So a range of comments there. I guess what I would bring in as someone who is a Bible teacher is the importance of us having foundational understanding of marriage from a biblical perspective as Christians. And if we understand that marriage is a covenant, not a contract, then the prenup is not even an issue, really, because covenant means you're going into marriage without a plan for exit. And I think you need to have that understanding of marriage if you're going to make solid and wise marriage choices. Because many times people think, well, if it doesn't work out, I'll leave. If it, but if you have the understanding that this is a partner for life and I'm going into it without an exit route, then you will choose differently, I think. And then I think when you're in it, you will position yourself and interact differently with your spouse and have a mindset of working it out, regardless of what happens. Now, we know that there are going to be difficulties and challenges in marriage. And we know that some marriages will end, but to go into marriage with a plan for when it fails defeats the pattern of God and the plan of God for marriage. Pastor, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, by the time you're having a prenup before marriage, you've already defeated the whole purpose of the marriage. The marriage has ended already, because you're going in with the mind that it will end. Marriage can only succeed when it goes in when you go in with the mindset of finality. It's like getting on a flight and you want the door open just in case, And guess what? There'll be occasions that may warrant your wanting to jump out when there are thunderstorms and all of that. So you might actually think that well, this thing may not get my destination. Should I not jump out now? But because the plane is always permanently sealed, you don't have a choice but to see to the end. So prenups definitely they're not biblical.
Okay, thanks, Pastor. Let's ask this other question, which is quite interesting. Can you date somebody who is separated, not divorced? Maybe his divorce is still to be finalized. He's separated from his wife, or vice versa. A woman who is separated from her husband, plans to divorce, but is not. Is that somebody that we should entertain as a potential life partner and date? I'd love to hear people's comments and also what the panel thinks.
I'd like to take that one, PB. So
yeah, go for it, Rachel.
Yeah, I don't believe that someone should date someone who is separated, even if they're on their way to divorce. I feel like they're still married. So you should honor that. You don't know what can happen. And I feel like the person is still tied to the person, even if they don't speak, even if there is some contention there, and you don't want to be a part of that. I feel like you would have more clarity for your future with that person or with a partner if they were free completely from someone else. And I do feel like in addition to that, they should take some time off as well. So I don't think them dealing with you in a situation like that is advisable.
Yeah, great responses, Rachel. Anybody else?
Yeah, I would absolutely echo Rachel's sentiments. I think when people get separated, there's a whole reason, and I'm not a lawyer, but I have friends who have been through separation and divorce, and the whole reason that the what they call it, the government or the legal system requires you to separate for 2 years before they can confirm a divorce is to sometimes give you time to see if you can reconcile. So if somebody is then dating you, they're not focusing on trying to reconcile their marriage. And from a biblical perspective, it's a dangerous thing to be a party to adultery. Pastor Bimbo, you literally just talked about covenant, and it's a dangerous thing to be party to somebody breaking covenant. So people always say you lose, you lose them how you get them. So if you marry somebody if you date somebody when they're technically legally married, you may lose them the same way. Who knows? I'm not saying, but it's definitely something I say steer clear from. I've been approached by guys who, and there's a thing about guys who say, oh, she's my ex, and then when you have a conversation, they mean ex-wife with their kids at home. So for me, you have to just say goodbye to that. Unless he's divorced, he is married, sis. It doesn't matter what he tells you. It doesn't matter if he tells you that he's still at home because he can't afford to move out because he's paying the mortgage and the rent and whatever it is, sis, he's married. So carry your bag.
Yeah. And you know what? Aside of that, anybody coming out, or he has a lot of baggage, basically. And, marriage is tough enough without putting yourself at extra disadvantage with somebody who already has a wife, who has a marriage situation he hasn't sorted out yet, kids. Apart from scripturally speaking, it is adultery because he's still married. So, I see single ladies fall for this from time to time, especially more mature singles. And, of course, you will get the rare exception where the relationship goes on to be long lasting, but the majority of time, it always ends in tears. So not recommended. We have this question, and I think it's an important one because I hear it a lot. I've met somebody, he's not a Christian, but he's a good person. And he's a lot better behaved than Christians. I see more fruit of the Spirit in him than I see in some Christians. So is it okay, even though the Bible says we shouldn't be unequally yoked? What are our thoughts?
No, go ahead, Rachel. That's fine. Go.
Oh, sorry, no, I was going to say something. It may be a bit strong, but I feel like I have siblings that are good people. They have fruit of the spirit. I wouldn't date them. So I just feel like if something's off limits, don't try and justify or, put it in a place that it shouldn't be. I feel like as a believer, a Christian is a Christian, whether they're a good person or not, that's fine. That's good to be your friend, your neighbor, anything else. But in terms of a relationship, I don't think you should even consider across that boundary.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I was just going to say, echo what Rachel said and say that there's only one way to fulfilling like the purpose that God has for you, and that's through Jesus Christ. And so if you end up being with somebody who isn't, following Jesus Christ, you will not fulfill the purpose that he has for you as a couple. So whether he's a good person or not, he needs to be, in Christ. So yeah.
I think Demi more or less summarized it. I mean, it's a no-go area at all, because I mean, if I mean, she more or less summarized. I can go at length with it, but what it is if God has not been able to convert him yet, yeah, and then you get married to him, are you saying you're wiser than God? And then when the person gets into the marriage, anything can happen. They can become anything. They can decide to become an idol worshiper. They can anything can happen. So I mean, I won't even date a non-serious Christian, not to talk of an unbeliever. You put yourself at risk.
So somebody on the chat has said that their parents, their dad married as an unbeliever and became a Christian after 15 years. And that does happen from time to time, but I don't know what the first 15 years was like for your mom. And I think you have to marrying a believer is not just about going to church together. It's about having a relationship with God and what that does for you in terms of the person that you are, in terms of your ability to hear God, have the power of God available to you, being spirit-led, having wisdom for your decisions, and just living a Christ-empowered life. So it's not just about, we have the same faith. It's all of the things that come with being a believer. Not even having a spouse you can pray with, you can agree with, you can give sacrificially with, you can fast with, you can believe God on a word, stand on a promise with. There's so much of what God wants to enjoy, for you to enjoy as a couple, that I think is hard for you to do if you don't have the same
faith.
faith.
You want to take the risk of marrying the person and the possibility of them converting in 15 years. We've also seen, I mean, like Pastor Bim said, the percentage of those that convert from experience is very, very little. We've also seen people who went radical. They married a moderate Muslim, then the Muslim guy went radical Taliban Muslim, and all sorts of things happened. You don't want that. Then the simple thing is, why do you want to start your marriage on disobedience to God? It's simple. You cannot be wiser than God.
Yeah. And, I don't know about what this particular lady's experience was, but I know some ladies that their husbands gave their lives after 10, 15 years of marriage. But I know that the first 15 years of marriage was suffering for them because of, adultery and just ungodly behavior. So I think that one is a bit touch and go. It's always better to err on the side of caution. I was just going to give an example of somebody who, anyway, we don't have time. We could tell lots of stories here. So another question we have is, and this is a very topical one, and this is about guys and Christian feminists, so it's like being a Christian and being a feminist is kind of a current thing. And guys are wondering, how do they position themselves concerning that what does that mean in terms of, obviously you want to be a forward-thinking guy, you want to, a woman who feels empowered and feels like she can be all that God has created her to be. But what does that mean for roles within the Christian relationship and kind of carrying that whole headship and submission thing? So it'd be great to hear your thoughts and comments on that, either from the panel or on the comment section. But I don't know if there's any of our panelists who want to speak to this issue while we're waiting for responses. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think, with feminism and today's society, it's, I think, just speaking with friends, it tends to get heated. It's got mixed agendas now, I think, and for me personally, it's a worldly view, if you ask me. And I think looking at it, definitely being advocates and empowering women, definitely as human beings is what we need in this society. But the word feminism itself, I think, has different meanings to different people. And so yes, if I'm answering that question, it is, I'll probably be pushing back on people that ask me, because yes, I'm all for women empowerment, but in terms of what feminism is now today, in today's society, I think yes, we have. It's getting extreme, I would say. If I use my words carefully, and I think yes, if we're bringing it back to a biblical perspective, it's making sure that yes, there's definitely family values, where a man and a woman are playing their roles in the society, whether at home or externally as well. So I think going back to your question, Bibi, I personally believe if we continue to empower women and ensuring that yes, women are playing a huge role in the society, I'm all for that. But in terms of what it means now, where I believe it's been diluted, it's something that I won't agree with. Hopefully that makes sense.
Sorry, Peter, can I just say
thanks, Olamide,
something?
you're a brave man for your stand. Is there anybody who would want to to contribute?
Peter, can I just say something quickly to what Olamide said?
Go for it.
Yeah, I do agree with Olamide. I, as a person, I definitely want a strong woman. But I think when it comes to feminism, let me just say, obviously, some people say it's the whole equality thing. I should have the same. We're equal. Yeah, we're definitely all created in God's image. So, but there are roles, there are certain things that have been assigned to each person as with our gender. And I think when I've had these conversations, a lot of people feel like it's a thing of where I'm not your slave. You can't tell me this. You can't tell me that. And I think that's just the extreme. Like, I think that's when people just take it. I think that's when people just take it to the extreme, and we then try to mix things up. The agenda, again, people. Well, if we bring it back to the Bible, I'm not for it. And if we bring it back to the Bible as well, I don't think the definition of what people push out there as I can stand on my own, I'm independent, Miss Independent, all of this stuff. I don't think it helps anyone, if I'm being totally honest. I think there's work to do on both sides, for guys and for females. There's nothing wrong with a strong woman, but you need to again know how to manage your house, should I say, or manage yourself. And for the guy as well, if you have a strong woman, empower her, help her to be better. Be secure in yourself, because again, I've been in conversations with guys where it just seems like guys are threatened, so to say. So be secure in yourself, empower your woman. So I just think that we should all, I don't want to say too much before.
Thanks. You'll be glad to know that about 5 ladies dropped off that chat. so obviously we're on sensitive ground here. And I actually don't think that this is a topic that we can exhaust properly or discuss properly within this context. I would want to invite all of the TLC members, though, to attend the cluster where we talk about power. So the current cluster, we're doing money, power, communication, and sex. I believe one of the sessions is about power, and I talk about gender roles, equality, feminism. So we'll really be able to unpack it in that session a little bit more. Okay, so we've got 5 minutes. We've got another lady that's left. So obviously this is a contentious issue. So let's look at another question. What if your parents don't support your relationship? What does it mean? Is that a strong indication that you should jettison the relationship, or you know, how do you position yourself? What should your next steps be if somebody you're really into, your parents don't like the person? What are our thoughts?
I think it depends on your relationship with your parents and who your parents are and what they believe in. If they are Christians, if you've grown up in a Christian home, your parents are Christians, and you know, you feel like you trust their choice, you trust their discernment, then I would say that if they don't like the person, then there's a reason why they don't like the person, and you should respect that. But if, however, you have a bit of a, you know, strange relationship with your parents, you know, I don't really know how to word it, but if you see them as people that, yes, they're your parents and you love them, but they might not know the best decision for you, but instead you have mentors and other people that can speak into your life in a way that is more convincing and more biblical, then perhaps, you know, their opinion isn't so, you know, not as important, but it doesn't take you away from, you know, from the right relationship or so to say. Yes, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, great comments. Thank you. Anybody else? Pastor, parents are not into the person you love.
Now what do we do?
Yeah.
I think we should start from the viewpoint of what is God saying. Is it the will of God? Is it not the will of God? And if you're sure it's the will of God, if you pray and wait, I believe they will come round. If they don't, for reasons, their own reasons like faith or ethnicity, maybe your parents are Muslim and they want you to marry a Muslim, or the issue of tribe, but you know this is the will of God for you. I mean, well, I will tell you what I would do. It's the same way my dad didn't want me to go into ministry, and I knew it was the will of God. I mean, the will of God is more important for me than, you know, pleasing my parents. And eventually my dad came around, but to each man his own. You know, I don't, you know, you have to be convinced, you know, that this is God's will for you. Yeah.
Okay. What I would say is each person's situation is individual. So certainly if that is what you're experiencing, get some help. You know, speak to pastors, speak to relationship mentors, uncles, aunts, you know, try and get buy-in and support from other people who are important, because they may be able to weigh in with your parents for you. So I'd say don't go on that journey alone. Somebody advised me to speak quickly to the feminism issue, saying that we only heard from men. So let me speak to that quickly before we round up. I've got one more question. I don't know whether we'll have time to take it though. I think a lot of the challenges and the difficulties we have with yes, is the relationship between Christianity and feminism doesn't need to be opposed, I think, if we understand God's heart for womanhood. I think a lot of the challenges and the difficulties we've had is because what we've experienced of headship traditionally has been unbiblical, and it has been abusive in some instances. And so that has led a lot of young women who are also believers to fight against the whole idea of gender roles, headship, and submission. And I think the answer is really having a biblical understanding of our values as people made in God's image, men and women, are valued equally, and nobody being more important than the other person, but knowing that God has also assigned us certain responsibilities within the marriage relationship. So the Bible says, wives, submit to your husbands. It doesn't say submit to all men. So I think that's, first of all, the first thing is that within our workplaces, outside of the marriage relationship, women can stand shoulder to shoulder with any man in any position and have headship and have authority within those environments. But within the marriage environment, God has called women to submit to their husbands. Now, I said that to understand submission properly and not to see it as abuse, you have to understand that the man also is supposed to be submitted himself. So the man is submitted to Christ and the woman is submitted to the man. But the Bible also says that the woman is a helper and a partner to the man. So it's not a position of this is the man, the woman is here, right? It is a relationship with two people working together in partnership, but one person seeing the other person as given the assignment of leadership within that relationship, pure and simple. That is all headship and submission means. It means within this relationship, this is the appointed leader, right? But it doesn't mean that's the person that makes all the decisions. That's the person who frames the relationship. And I think once we begin to get a biblical picture and a complete 360-degree picture of our equality as God's creation, the Bible says we're heirs together, and the biblical roles, then it becomes less of an issue. I hope.
There's some interesting contributions here. Okay. Someone says also feminism isn't misandry, which is where it's going for many. I guess it isn't a hatred for men. That's what this person is saying. But then a gentleman now said the modern day average feminist has a problem with wives submitting to her husband. So, I mean, when you first posed the question, my first thought was, what exactly is feminism? Before I can, what do you define as feminism?
Right. So that's an interesting question. So feminism means being pro-women, basically. Okay. It means,
so there's nothing wrong with that.
Right. It means pro-women, but I think, and I think it also speaks about equality, right? I think where the issue begins to become difficult is where we brand it as hating men and rejecting biblical values. And I think this is where the problem is for modern women. How can I be a woman who is a feminist when the Bible says I should submit to my husband? Because if I'm for equality, how can I then submit? Because we think submission indicates inferiority of the person submitting. And I think that's where the central.
It's. I think that there should actually be a whole teaching or something on, because a lot of, so here I am as the pastor. I hear feminism. What I have seen of feminism is more hostile. So I mean, you know me, even on the issue of racism, I'm black, but I have a passive approach to this thing. So it's not about me being a man or woman, So, but what I have seen of, there's the whatever of the Black Lives Matter and all of that stuff that is very antagonistic, and I'm like, no, I am for equality, but I don't like hostility. Yeah, so it's something that needs to be spoken about from a biblical viewpoint, and so that people cannot, especially with this generation. The millennials, and our sons have told us about ladies in uni, and it's important that people don't pick up a spirit from the world that is like, and think that the Bible is actually against them, enjoying their marriage and all of that stuff. Yeah.
Wow. Well, I mean, we could be on here for another hour, but we have 10 minutes left, and I think this is a good point to wrap up the conversation today. There's a lot more to say on this particular issue. As I said, I pick it up at the cluster campaign. We do a whole session on it, and I also spoke about it a little bit on my message Last Sunday Becoming the One, which is on YouTube. You want to check that out because I try to speak to this issue as well, because it's a very current and topical issue. But moving away from feminism and Christianity, I hope that today's session has been helpful, useful for you. You've picked up lots of things. We tried to touch on lots of different things. And all of these questions that I shared today were submitted by singles. I didn't make any of them up. And so, we just wanted to speak to the questions, the issues that people are grappling with. So I hope that it's been helpful and informative for you, and that you've picked key things that are really going to move you forward. Pastor?
Yes, I mean, I think from what we've heard today, I think it'll be imperative that we continue these conversations. There are many questions, there are many things that need to be clarified. So, I mean, I don't know, maybe we can actually organize this kind of on the sofa kind of Q&A kind of thing on an intermittent basis. I don't know. Yeah. Even if it's every other month or something to that effect.
So we're going to be coming back to you, and we're going to be speaking about this and other topical issues from time to time. So do stay glued onto our social media handles, myself, Pastor Shola, and also the Liberty Church handles. We're very active on Instagram, and anything that we're doing for singles will be on there. So please do stay tuned to us. We wanted to do a survey before we close out, and we wanted to give you some gifts to incentivize you for the survey. So I'm going to be handing over to Pidgey now. She's going to be handling the survey for us.